Yeah, so sometime after dinner, that makes sense to have it shortly afterwards, have the discussion group, and then not have a meditation, or have a meditation after that. Raise of hand, by show of hand. No meditation, only discussion group? Okay, no problem. Discussion group, and then after that, meditation. All right. Can we arrange that? Is that okay? It's just going to be a silent meditation. Yeah. So. Great. Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, just to end the day with the meditation. And if you feel it's too much, I mean, any of you feel it's too much. I mean, it's good to come to classes. It's good to come to the discussion group. But then with the meditation, you feel like you want to do it on your own, or it's too much. I mean, you shouldn't do too much. It's a long program. It's a long day, basically. So just see how it feels. Does that make sense? Okay. And then you can always play with it, how long it's going to be. I think half an hour is fine. I mean, a whole hour of meditation, that seems...
Then maybe we'll do 6:15 to 7 discussion group, and 7 to 7:30 the meditation, and end at 7:30.
Yeah, just to calm down,
exactly.
Right? I mean, you'll be like excited, discussing, gives you the opportunity to calm down. Okay, sounds good. All right, so let's do some meditation. Now, what did I say last time about how we talked about analytical meditation, right? So it's analytical meditation, but what is very important as the conclusion? What is it that guides us to, what is it, the way you put it, that helps us to actually bring whatever conclusion we've come to into our daily life? What is that? An emotional response. Now, that's easily said, but what is the emotional response? Sometimes it's pretty obvious. You do meditation on, let's say, compassion, reflecting on all sentient beings, how we're interconnected, how their kindness is how their kindness, or how our happiness is dependent on their kindness and so forth. That's pretty straightforward, so compassion, okay. But I want to do the meditation on what we discussed this morning. It seems a little far-fetched. We talked about the 3 types of suffering, but without fully understanding these 3 types of suffering, and I'll go through them again while we meditate, we won't be able to understand compassion, because compassion here means something very specific. So we need to meditate on that. But what is the emotional response? Oh no, ugh. And that wouldn't be like resentment towards the 3 types of suffering. And that's of course not the aim. But rather, an emotional response here can just mean, and I have a hard time, I mean, it's so difficult to explain emotions. Kind of like to be moved on an emotional level, like, whoa, for lack of a better word, right? And in the beginning, you fake it. You may have to fake it. You fake it until you make it. This is a big principle in Buddhism. It sounds a little odd, but it's actually a lot of what we do initially doesn't really come from the depth of our heart. It's impossible to get that. So you go through the motions. I don't want to use the word pretend, but really that's what it is. I mean, there's a whole system of meditations where you pretend. You visualize to be someone you're not yet. But that's psychologically really effective. So just because it's psychologically effective, we do it. Now, as I talked about, well, suffering of suffering we don't really need to discuss, but I discussed, well, change, our pleasant experiences, they're not as intense as that of a Buddha or a Buddhist, an Arhat, not even close. Secondly, they don't last. They're dependent on things that are totally unreliable, which is the external, that's constantly changing. So reflecting on that, in the end, why am I so attached? So it should lead to, why am I so obsessed about it? Why I spend so much time and energy securing that, by looking after my body in particular. I mean, this obsession in the West, and I'll do it in the meditation, but just you have already a sense of where it's going to. In the West in particular, but also nowadays anywhere really in the world, this obsession with wrinkles and, I don't know, the color of your skin. Here you apply chemicals to turn lighter. In the West you throw yourself into the sun to turn into a tandoori chicken and, you know, to get skin cancer and what have you. So, wow, what are we doing to ourselves with a body that is something we leave behind? And in the meantime, it's not that amazing. I mean, it doesn't look that amazing the older we get, and there's really, you can spend as much money as you want. It's not going to make you look younger if you apply all these lotions. So the point is to really get a sense, is there something more meaningful? Is there something that's more important than that? Can I let go? What does it mean, let go? Let go of my attachment or my obsession with this. Just this is so important, right? So this is especially, well, the mind, of course, like here it's the type of ordinary mind. I may be so proud of my, I don't know, mathematical skills and my knowledge and all that. Well, unless I put it to use for others, it's only helping me to increase my mental afflictions, my arrogance and what have you, right? So the whole point is to reflect on that and see there's so much, there's something so much greater to achieve. There's a kind of happiness or well-being. There's a kind of mind and body that is so much greater. We haven't really discussed the body, but just to know this is the direction we're going. And then hopefully to get a sense in the end, like this emotional response, it's not worth it. And again, how is it an emotional response? It's just something that moves us deep within. Does that make sense? Okay, let's try. Let's try to do this meditation. I'll guide you through it. Of course, it all depends on your own experience, your own logic. That is what needs to come in. And we'll start with some breathing first, breathing meditation. Now pay attention to your own mind, your own body. Becoming aware, first of all, of what we usually call suffering of suffering. Which there are plenty of. pain in the body, sickness, then mentally there's worry, fear, sadness, loneliness. And so many other mental problems. And we naturally want to be free from these. What about the other two types of suffering? Suffering of change, which refers to our happiness. Our ordinary, pleasant experiences. That we've been running after our entire life. From the perspective of a liberated being or an awakened being, a Buddha, these are forms of suffering. Because compared to the happiness, the blissful experiences of an arhat or a Buddha, they're neglectable. From their perspective, they're just a form of suffering. Since the happiness of an arhat or a Buddha doesn't compare in any way to our pleasant experiences. Our pleasure is merely the absence of some kind of problem. it's like experiencing 5 degrees Celsius as warm. After a long winter when it was minus 25 degrees. Plus, it is dependent on external objects. It's dependent on the food we eat, the friends we hang out with. Possibly the weather. Entertainment. Success. Having a good reputation, and so on. Our well-being depends on objects that are unreliable. That don't always rise. And even if they do, they keep disappearing again. And even if they don't, even if the object continues on, our attitude towards it sooner or later changes. Eating certain foods may give us happiness, may be extremely pleasant. But if we continue to eat the same food, that pleasure turns into suffering. If we ate it every day, after a few weeks, we'd get tired of it. Hanging out with friends. May seem to be intrinsically pleasant, but if we had to hang out with these same friends for a month on end, our initial pleasure would slowly change into boredom and possible resentment. So right now, there's nothing that can provide us with lasting happiness. We constantly have to change the situation. It's like we're balancing on a board full of nails. If we stand on one nail for too long, it causes pain. Therefore, we have to keep in constant movement. But mistakenly believe if we just got that job, bought that object, or got together with this person, we'd find lasting happiness. And this is simply because of the third type of suffering. So the fact we experience suffering of suffering and very limited, unreliable, pleasant experiences is because of pervasive, conditioned suffering, which is having this present mind and body. A body that, if we don't look after it, constantly look after, gets hungry, thirsty, achy and smelly. But more importantly, a mind that is totally out of control. Feeling happy one moment and miserable the next. Controlled by attachment to I and mine. Attachment to whatever benefits I and mine. An aversion towards anything that threatens I and mine. All simply due to our fundamental misconception So is it really worth it to spend all our time and energy to run after the suffering of change? driven by our attachment to pervasive suffering, which are mind and body. Foregoing this incredible, lasting bliss and happiness we miss out on. Due to our attachment to the prison of samsara. So now in conclusion, try to elicit an emotional response. Possibly in the form of letting go. And focus on that emotion for a few moments, single-pointedly. Without analyzing. And I'll slowly arise from the meditation. Okay. How did that go? Was that too long, or was the emotional response difficult at the end? Yeah, I said it's fake it in the beginning, it's a little hard. Sometimes, usually when you do the meditation on your own, it's a little easier because you're already knowing where you're going and you know much better how to bring that about. Anyway, that's just once.
But the framework is helpful, so now that you have the framework, I think we can practice
Yes, yes.
within that.
Absolutely, we can all do this. In fact, like I said yesterday, we do it all the time. We never get angry without a reason. We reflect on what the person has done to us, what they didn't do, and so forth, and there's an emotional response. We're very good at it. But now the point is to use what we learn about, well, reality from a Buddhist point of view, and then elicit a positive emotional response. And once there is that response, sooner or later it will act upon our daily life. It will have an effect on that. But it takes time, of course, because the opposite is so much stronger. Right now, we are like in a prison with the doors wide open. Right? We're imprisoned in the mind of attachment. But the doors are wide open. It's all up to us to at least start to let go, move in a particular direction. Okay, but why am I talking about all this? What about compassion? Right? It seems like I'm totally lost the plot. Like, we didn't talk about compassion so far. Well, we will now, because the question is, what is compassion? What is compassion? What does it even mean? Does anyone know the definition of compassion? No? All right. Well, the definition as it's given in the texts is focusing on a sentient being or sentient beings and wishing them, no, sorry, I should say this differently. A loving attitude, in Tibetan you start, in Tibetan when you translate it, what I said, say in the beginning actually comes at the end. So a loving attitude, focusing on sentient beings or a sentient being, wishing them to be free from suffering. So a loving attitude, a loving mind, or an affectionate mind that wishes for sentient being or a sentient being or sentient beings to be free from suffering. Okay. That's the big deal about compassion. It's a simple definition, basically, but not as simple as we may think. Because, first of all, sentient beings, how many sentient beings? Number one. This affectionate attitude, where does that come from? How do you develop that? And what suffering do we wish sentient beings to be free from? What kind of suffering would that be? What do you think? Now you have the terminology, suffering of change, pervasive suffering, right? So in other words, do you want sentient beings to get rid of what they usually identify as suffering? Or do you want them to get rid of, on top of the suffering, get rid of their ordinary happiness? Or do you want them to get rid of all three? Or neither? Or more than that? What do you think?
All three, I believe. All three.
All three? Okay, she's saying all three. Does anyone disagree? What do you think? Just suffering of suffering? I mean, what they usually call unpleasant. May all sentient beings be free from that. What do you think? What would you wish to have?
They understand Dharma so they can free themselves.
Pardon?
They can understand Dharma like us so they free themselves from the suffering.
They can understand.
Dharma.
Yes, but what do you want them to, if you want to generate compassion, I mean, I don't know, maybe no one wants to generate compassion, but if you wanted to generate compassion, what would you want sentient beings to be free from? What type of suffering? Only the first type or more than that? What do we usually, okay, let me ask it this way. We all have compassion, right? We all have compassion to some degree. We see someone suffering and we want to help. Don't you agree? As long as the eye is not involved, right? We have like this spontaneous reaction. If it's not someone we terribly dislike, usually. If we dislike someone, we may actually sit there rejoicing if something happens to them. But usually, if someone we like or someone we are indifferent towards, we see them having a problem and we spontaneously want to do something. Is that right? Yeah? You agree? Okay. So we all have, I said this yesterday, we all have some degree of compassion. But what is the suffering that we want them to be free of in that moment, that makes us, run towards them and possibly help them? Let's say an elderly person slips on the street and, you pick them up and help them and, I don't know, take them to hospital and so forth. We would probably all do that. I don't know how far it goes taken to hospital. That takes a little bit more time. So my time, ooh, I'm busy, ooh, okay, so that may take it a little bit, stretch it too far. But to run towards them and help them to get up, or, I don't know, maybe push them to the side when they're too close to the train or whatever, we would probably do. Or a child, for instance. So what kind of suffering do we want them to be free of in that moment?
First one.
Pardon?
Suffering of suffering.
Yep, absolutely. Suffering of suffering. Why? Because we want to get rid of it. We don't want to suffer. We don't want problems. We try to avoid suffering of suffering. So we don't need to receive lots of teachings. I didn't even include it in the meditation. Generate the wish to be free from it. Well, we already want to be free from it. So there's no need to develop the wish to be free from it. What I tried to do in this meditation, for you to develop the wish to look closer at the kind of happiness, that limited happiness we experience that keeps us on our toes the whole time, to generate the wish for that, for us to be free from that. Therefore, when it comes to our compassion right now, it's pretty limited. First of all, it's usually like just a few people. In terms of how many people are involved, quite limited. A few people. So one limitation is just a few people. Second limitation, the suffering. Third limitation, the time. A few moments. And then we're busy and it's like, okay, enough of that, someone else can take over, kind of thing, right? Would you agree? So our compassion right now, I called it baby compassion. Well, it is important because if we didn't have that, it would be very difficult to develop a stronger type, the type we're interested here, the one that we focus on, and that is so much deeper. But first of all, recognizing that we have some is important. Secondly, starting there to maybe extend it, right? I mean, extend it in terms of feeling it for longer. And usually when we start meditating on compassion, we focus on sentient beings suffering of suffering. So what do you want to do? Extend the time, extend the scope in terms of how many sentient beings, all sentient beings, right? All sentient beings. What does that even mean, all sentient beings? I don't know all sentient beings. So why would I want them to be free from suffering? I don't even know them. And lastly, so all sentient beings and the type of suffering. And that type of suffering. So from the point of view of this particular tradition, the tradition what's often described as the universal vehicle, here the focus is on all sentient beings and not just suffering of suffering, but all limitations. You could argue even more than the three types of suffering. Even that which keeps us from becoming enlightened. You can go as far as that. So, usually they say it's the three types. In the scriptures it mentions the three types of suffering. So the kind of compassion we're aiming at, and it's really difficult, but as I said in the morning, I said in this tradition, you go right into the most advanced aspects of something. Not to overwhelm us, but to get a sense that's where we're heading. Even if we're at the very first step. Any trip you take, even if you've just taken the first step towards this particular goal you have, I don't know, walk all the way to Russia or whatever, right? We're still here, we haven't even started, but we need to know where we're heading. We need to know at least that's the goal. It'll take time, Russia is far away, and so is spiritual kind of, development. It's far away at this point, but at least we know we're going. Plus, any of these advanced practices, a lighter version of that, we can do now. A lighter version. Okay. Now work on our baby compassion. But why should we? Why should we? Why? Of course, that's an important question. Why should I do that? What do I care? They're not doing that for me. Why should I do it for them? Right? Okay, so a few questions come up. Does it make sense to work on that compassion? In what way? And in what way is emptiness relevant to that? What's the relationship between emptiness and compassion? Anyone? Yes?
We're interdependent on others. If others are suffering, we cannot be happy.
Interdependence. Okay, so he's mentioning interdependence. Emptiness, as I said in the morning, can't be explained without understanding interdependence. And of course, the happiness of others, or my happiness, depends on the happiness of others. Okay, fair enough. You wanted to say something?
Yeah,
Similar stuff. Okay, yes. Oh, it was similar. Okay. Oh, yeah, it's already done. Yeah, thank you. You've got a hard job. We should make a rule. You can only ask a question if your neighbor just asked one. No kidding. All right. Okay. Yes. So basically, yes. Okay, makes sense. But is there more to it? So just from the point of view of dependent origination, yeah, because we depend on others. So if we want to be happy, we want to be free from suffering, we should make sure others are free from suffering. Yeah, that very much wraps it up. I mean, that very much, but is there maybe more to it? Yes?
I often feel that giving gives me happiness. So for that happiness, I would want to be compassionate and send my love and kindness.
For my own happiness. Yep, good point. I mean, I really want to be happy. And please don't get me wrong when in Buddhism, or don't misunderstand what is said in Buddhism, there's so much emphasis on others. It seems to mean we should neglect ourselves. No. When we say for the benefit of all sentient beings, first of all, we are part of that. Because if it's all sentient beings, mine is myself, it's no longer all sentient beings. So I'm actually included in that. But then on top of that, from a psychological point of view, we're very good at looking after one single person. Ourselves. So we don't need to emphasize that too much, right? We've already, at the expenses of others, have been doing it. In fact, we fall into the extreme. Like imagine you're walking on a tightrope, you're walking on a balancing beam or something. So if you go too much in this direction, what is the best way to get your balance back? The other way. So to go to the other side by focusing now more on other sentient beings, but not at the expense of your own. So it's not about I'll stop eating so everyone else has got enough food, or I'll stop looking after myself so I have enough time to look after sentient beings. That would be, let's say, a mother who has 10 kids and she decides to give all the food to her kids and no longer sleep so she can be with them all day long. Well, that's silly. These children are going to be orphaned pretty soon, right? I mean, if you think about it, if you have all these kids you want to look after, you have all these people you love and you want to look after them, you better look after yourself to be able to look after them. Therefore, wisdom is very, very important. compassion requires wisdom. Not just the wisdom of emptiness, but also wisdom when it comes to other things. You mentioned it. I want to be happy. I deserve to be happy, as everyone else does. But being resentful, being full of aversion and hatred is not going to bring me any happiness. That's the thing. Remember yesterday I spoke about it. I mentioned it briefly. If we have that moment of just deep love and compassion for other sentient beings, in that moment we don't worry. What is there to worry about? My focus is on all sentient beings. What do I usually worry about? I and mine. That's the funny thing, that when you focus on all sentient beings, you can't experience the kind of attachment and worry that we can have for ourselves. It's impossible. The moment all sentient beings come in, you can't have attachment for all sentient beings. You can't even have anger for all sentient beings. I mean, you can have that sense, I hate everyone. But that's not literally what you do, right? A cute cat comes into your room, you're not going to hate that cat, right? Or a really friendly person. So we have those thoughts sometimes, oh, I hate everyone. But then someone nice comes in and brings you a cup of coffee and you're like, you don't hate them. So talking about like lasting anger and so forth, or lasting compassion and so forth. So can't have like anger. You can in the spur of the moment have that sense all, but it doesn't literally mean that. Does that make sense? So our afflictions are really, really, really limited in so many ways. They can't even focus on all sentient beings. Can't even do that. And they don't last. I mean, you can try to make them last, but it's really difficult to really make them last because they're not rooted in reality. They're totally unrealistic. They're all wrong consciousnesses. Wrong consciousnesses are minds whose objects don't exist. Their objects don't exist. Okay, let's look at these because we have to understand the afflictions, the mental afflictions that are the opposite of love, compassion, and so forth. To really understand love and compassion and how love and compassion are in accordance with reality, while that which hinders us from experiencing love and compassion is in opposition to reality. Let's look at love. Let's look at these mental afflictions, understanding them. Anger. Define anger for me. Anyone have a definition for anger? What is anger? We all know what anger, I mean, we know what it feels like. It's an emotion, a negative emotion. By the way, not every mental affliction is an emotion. Not every mental affliction. So afflictive emotion is not a good translation for the word klesha. It's not a good word. Because not every delusion, as it's also called, or negative, harmful state of mind is an emotion. You'll nod. Be careful when you nod. You have to give me an example of something that is a mental affliction, that is a klesha, but is not an emotion. What? Pardon? Forgetfulness is not a mental affliction, actually. Forgetfulness. It depends on what you forget, actually. Just, you know, there's certain states of mind in and of themselves, they're not non-virtues. Do you want an example? Regret. If I regret a positive action, that's non-virtues. If I regret a negative action, it's virtues. So regret or forgetfulness. Forgetfulness of what? Of getting angry? That's a good thing. But forgetfulness of love and compassion, okay, that's a problem. So forgetfulness in and of itself, it depends what you forget. What is a mental affliction, a klesha, that is not an emotion? Yes?
Self-centeredness?
Yes. No, sorry. That's an emotion.
Wrong view
Yes, wrong view. Which wrong view?
of the self itself.
For instance, perceiving a self that doesn't exist. That's not an emotion. That is just a mind that is a wrong view. A wrong, yeah, it's a misconception, yeah. A wrong view, yeah. It's not, there's no emotional, it leads to emotional responses, but that in itself is not perceiving that which is impermanent as permanent. We do that all the time. In fact, we can only hold a grudge. We can only hold a grudge if we have a sense of permanence. But we get to that. You know what it means to hold a grudge, right? So, you know, you're still angry with that same person. But we get to that in a moment. So there's so many wrong views that give rise to so many crazy emotions. But let's look at these crazy emotions themselves. What is anger? How would you define anger?
The way I like to define it is an emotion that helps me know that my boundary has been crossed.
What?
An emotion that helps me know that, okay, my boundary has been crossed. Like the reaction that
Okay, my boundary, I've gone mad.
yeah.
I like that English word, mad. I got mad. It really expresses it well. I got mad. My boundaries have been crossed. This is embarrassing. You feel embarrassed, right, when it's all over? Oh, what did I just do? It's extreme. It's extreme, right? Okay, but there are other extreme emotions. So we cross our boundaries with attachment as well, right? We can be obsessive. We can be extremely greedy. We do cross certain boundaries. So in a way, there must be more to it.
Like a wish to harm another person.
All right, a wish to harm another person. Okay, is that anger? Huh. Okay, let's leave it for now. Wish to harm another person. Yes?
Maybe an emotional response for someone that hurts me or my friends, family, people that are close to me.
Yes, but that's absolutely right, but what is the anger? How would you describe that? Wishing to harm someone. Okay, what else? I said in the beginning, it's a wrong mind. Its object doesn't exist. Its object doesn't exist. In what way?
In a permanent way.
Pardon?
In a permanent way, like you think
The person is permanent. I perceive this object permanent. Yeah, that's probably a part of it. It's kind of to a certain degree, but there's something more direct. There's a more direct way in which this is a mistaken consciousness, a wrong consciousness. Yes?
Exaggerating the negative aspects of the object.
Very good. It exaggerates whatever negativity pissed me off, for lack of a better word. Right? Okay. Now, there's something very interesting happening in our mind. Something very interesting that needs to be stressed more, I think. It is stressed in some of the texts, but maybe needs to be stressed more. Because even before anger arises, something else arises. It's a mind that projects an extreme. It projects. It's an exaggerating mind, if you like. But let's start in the very beginning. I think it's helpful to start at the very beginning in terms of where does all the trouble come from? As I said yesterday, our root, of course, the root problem is that misconception. Okay, so what do we actually do? Without going too much into details, just to get a kind of a sense, a general sense when it comes to exaggerating how things exist, we believe that I and you, for instance, they're truly there. They've got nothing to do with my mind. This is just I, and you are just you. It's not really clear to me that you are I from your perspective. No. I don't see your perspective. I only see mine. So this is I, and you are you. This is I, and this is the rest. But this I seems to also be something very concrete, right? It's like very concrete, very tangible almost. There are times when it feels very strongly, I was hurt. I took it personally. What does that even mean? That was personal. That was personal. Oh, that wasn't personal, but that was. So what is that? What is the difference between I take it personally, or what they just did, that was personal? Oh, the other thing, that wasn't personal. The difference is when it's not personal, it's like, it's not directed at this eye, right? I just happened to walk past and like, they saw 2 legs and a head and then they shouted at me. But it could have been anyone else. So it wasn't anything directed at this eye, right? I even point in a certain direction. It seems to be here or here. In some cultures, in Japanese cultures, they say, watashi. In Taiwan, I do as well, like it's here. In some cultures, it's the middle of your chest, the center of your chest. The point is, taking it personally, there seems to be an I that someone has now wanted to attack. And that's not the body, and that's not the mind, right? It goes through mind and body. So they looked at me in a funny way. They actually looked at my body in a funny way, but because they did that, it seems they looked at me in a funny way. Or they destroyed my happiness, right? Or they hurt my feeling. What feeling was hurt? The happy feeling. That's gone now, so they hurt that. Oh, okay. It doesn't really, if you think about it, what does it even mean? They hurt my feeling. Okay, so they generated a feeling of hurt. Okay, that's what they did. And therefore they hurt me, because they hurt my feeling. So there's definitely a connection between mind and body. But it's not that. We never say, they looked at my body in a funny way. We don't even say that. That would be so weird. So what? They look at your body, but they didn't look at you in a funny way. Now it seems like they look at me in a funny way. My body, never mind. They did it through my body. So there seems to be something very, very solid, very concrete, what we call I. Right? Does that make sense? We all have that. And sometimes it's pretty strong. If someone, for instance, embarrasses you in front of lots of people, let's say in a crowd of people, all people you care, people important, some actors, actresses, Richard Gere and what have you, right? They're all in the crowd. And then someone says, this person, she stole all our stuff. And everyone is looking at you. Wow, great opportunity to test your sense of I. Whoa, me? I? It's like, ugh, it's almost like your eyes in your throat. It seems so strong, it's rebelling, it's right there, it's so embarrassing. It can be in a negative way, I just said, but it could also be saying, she's the greatest person in the whole world, next to the Dalai Lama or something, right? Suddenly you're being, again, whoa, me, whoa, very strong sense of I. Okay, that's where it all starts, this sense of I, as opposed to everyone else. Although we're all interconnected, I create a distance. Right? It's me here and you over there. But if it was just that, it wouldn't be such a problem. It wouldn't be such a problem. And of course I do the same with you guys. I believe there's some inherent I within you, an inherent self within you. I don't call it I is just me, but there's a self over there. I feel there's some person that is just not the mind and body. I may call it soul, I may call it the actual being, whatever I call it, but there's a very strong sense there's really this being there. I do this for everything. In fact, also for inanimate objects. There's a sense, there's an inherent goodness. Something coming from the side of the objects. Got nothing to do with anything else, it just is. For instance, good and bad. Very strong sense when it comes to morality. Whoa, a Buddha, a real, concrete Buddha over there. And then inanimate objects like, for instance, a table or something, this is really a table, this is really a cup. It's got nothing to do with my mind, you should all see it. It goes as far as thinking beauty, right? There's something truly beautiful in the object. It's got nothing to do with my mind. It's got nothing to do with my culture. It's really there. Doesn't it feel that way? It feels that way. I'm not saying we rationally, like, there's often a huge gap between our emotionally colored way of looking at reality that comes from deep within and a more rational way of looking at reality. So I said yesterday, we use phrases such as beauty lies in the eye of the beholder. Because on a rational level, we understand. It just depends on the person. There is no objective beauty. But deep within, the opposite is the case. And funnily enough, we can make both work. It's a total contradiction. Yeah, beauty lies in the eye of the beholder, but this person has a really bad taste. They don't know what's good, right? The kind of food they eat, they don't know what's really good. Whatever. How can they eat that stuff? That's disgusting, right? I mean, we think it all the time. The way we judge people is dependent on how they dress, and someone else may think this is incredibly attractive. And we think, oh, they don't know what's good. That shows there's a sense, there's over there, this objective, independent beauty or ugliness, goodness or badness, and so forth. That's why we have so many different political views, believing this one party is the best. Right? It doesn't have, there's no sense because I'm a farmer, I think it's best, or because I'm a worker in a factory, I think this is political. No, it seems like this is really good and the rest is all wrong. This is true for whatever we do. It seems that this objective world out there is just waiting to be discovered in the way it appears to our mind. So the way things appear to me, that's the way it seems to be out there. That my mind, my eyes, my ears and so forth, they're just looking glasses into the world. I see things as they are. Doesn't that make sense? Right? And then if someone doesn't call this a table, well, they're just plain wrong. They're just wrong. Okay. So, having said that, what about the eye? Now, with everything else, it's a problem. But the main problem is that the way we perceive things to be objectively and concretely out there, not dependent on my perception, no, they're really out there. The main problem is when it comes to the eye. Because what happens is, in this case, our mind perceives an eye, perceives something that is very close to this mind. It's very close to my mind. My mind, right, it perceives I, looking at myself, my own mind and body. I have a sense of I. There's the thought I, it arises. And now that thought I, there's nothing wrong with just thinking I, because there is an I, but actually it's a conventional I. It's not an I as concrete as it appears to my mind. But what happens is, I see a mind and a body, and I refer to myself. I have to refer to myself in a certain way, so I refer to myself as I. That's okay. But then I believe I'm not just having the thought I on the basis of mind and body. There really is something separate from mind and body. That's the I. It's not the mind, it's not the body, it's very separate. It's the owner of that. It's the owner of mind and body. And in fact, your I, yourself, and my I, myself, very different. Because my mind is close to that self. This is the self that is closest to my own mind. Your selves are not close to my own mind. Therefore, my self is precious. My I is precious, yours is not. Unless you do something for my I. So my mind is really just my mind. What it does is, well, the first What we first do is, well, becoming self-aware of our mind and body. Surely we have the thought I, and that's okay. There's the thought I, that's all right. Right? There's the thought table, there's the thought. There's nothing wrong with that thought. Our mind, in that way, labels, it designates I. Because it makes sense. I need to, distinguish this from everything else. But we then add a mode of existence that the I doesn't have. It seems to now not exist because I had the thought I, but it seems that I had the thought I because it's there. Does that make sense? Actually, I just think, okay, there's a mind, there's a body, so what could I refer to? Okay, I, all right. There's a mind, there's a body. Okay, I label a certain person. Give it a name, or say you, or say person, whatever it is, a self. But then, once I do that, it seems that on the basis of mind and body, there's something more than just having that thought. There is actually a separate thing. Like there's a separate cupness, right? It seems like there's the parts of the cup, and there's the actual cup. That's like overarching, that's somewhere in there, like a cupness, right? In reality, it's just made of atoms. Atoms that, when you go to the subtlest level, are not different from this microphone. So the basic building blocks of these two objects are exactly the same. But since they look different, since they function differently, I have a sense there's something in this microphone, oh, I shouldn't touch it, other than the atoms that makes it a microphone, because otherwise they would be identical. Right? The most basic building blocks on the subatomic level, there's no difference. On a subatomic level, if you were to take it apart and apart and apart, they're the same. But still, this looks very different. This microphone looks very different to this cup, has a different function, looks different, etc. So therefore, there must be something within this cup that distinguishes it from this microphone. Right? Would you agree? That's how it feels. But that can't be found. That can't be found. That thing, take it apart. You never find some kind of microphone-ness or a cup-ness. In the end, the more you take it apart, the more you come to the conclusion, in the end, there's only particles that are, in terms of their, functions, their look, etc., they're all the same. So how come this appears so differently? The same goes with the eye. Where's that eye? Here? No. I mean, you can open the chest, look inside, you'll find a heart. It's more to the left though, so maybe in some cases to the right, I don't know. But I won't find it. I won't find it. Right? Where's that eye? What is that eye? But I still perceive, I have a very strong sense of an I. And what is the next step after that perception? Is that projecting mind that now exaggerate its status. It's more important. It's more important. So before self-centeredness has even set in, first, I have a sense this is more important. I am more important. Mine is more important. And of all these mine, my happiness is most important. This is what my mind suggests to me because it wants to be happy. It wants to be happy. It perceives an I that is not the mind, that is not the body. And that I, which is actually just labeled, and that's okay, as long as it's labeled and there's some consistency to it, we can say conventionally there's an I. That's all okay, but our mind is not satisfied with it. Because of its tendency to exaggerate, it adds a mode of existence. It's really truly there, independently or intrinsically there. But as it doesn't stop there, what happens next is, this I is more important than yours, because it's closer to this mind, and its happiness is more important. That is the projecting mind, which a moment later leads to what is called self-centeredness, which is attachment to I and mine. Being attached, holding on to I and mine as being more precious. So first is just perceiving I and my happiness as more important, but there's no attachment yet. Attachment is the mind holds on to I and mine as being more important. It's like holding on to it, for a lack of a better word. Can't let go. And that's called self-centeredness. That's self-centeredness. This attachment to not being able to let go of I and mine, based on the sense it's more important, it's more precious, it's most precious, more precious than anyone else, right? Because it's closer to this mind. So it all comes from the mind. Is a particular type of mind that is just exaggerating, leading to an exaggerated emotion, which is attachment. We have similar versions of attachment that are not exaggerated minds. I would say there's always a counterpart to attachment that is not exaggerated. I mean, liking someone, feeling close to someone, that is actually a realistic mind. Feeling close to myself, feeling close to everyone else, that's a realistic mind. So there's no misperception that's crept in when you have that sense. So a liberated being, for instance, liking everyone. There's no sense, oh, I'm more important than you are. So the sense of closeness we usually have towards ourselves in the form of this attachment, well, here it's not exaggerated, so it's equal. Because there's no real difference between us. Just because of distance, that doesn't make any sense. Therefore, our attachment is an extreme emotional response that has a normal counterpart, which is just liking someone. No, we're obsessed about ourselves. We think we're more important than anyone else, which is not true. And on top of that, then we obsess about ourselves and our own happiness. So it's an extreme emotion. It's extreme. It's no longer rooted in reality. Why is it extreme? Because it's based on a view that is extreme, that is not realistic. We fall into an extreme that my I is more important just simply because, well, my mind, it's my mind doing that. My mind is suggesting that because my mind feels physically closer, I guess you could say physically, because you're over there and I'm over here, because it feels this I is physically closer to this body, to this mind, therefore I consider that to be more important. That doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense, but that's the reason why I get obsessed about myself, but not obsessed about you guys. I perceive you just as unrealistically as I perceive myself. I shouldn't say I should say my mind. My mind perceives myself, you, each one of you, just as unrealistically as my mind perceives the I. But because of that closeness, because of the I that it perceives, that exaggerates the existence of, is closer to that mind, whole different story. So the next step after generating that sense or having my mind now perceiving that concrete, solid I, the next step is it projects a kind of importance onto this I, which it doesn't have. More important than all of you. Sorry, more important than each one of you. Center of the universe, by the way. Center of my universe. And my happiness, of course, is part of that because the mind wants to be happy. Which then leads to attachment to I and mine. It's that emotional response. First, it was just a wrong view, misperceiving. So first, there's the root misconception, the exaggerating mind, the mind that projects an importance onto this object which it doesn't have, and then the mind holding on to it. And that is the self-obsession, the self-centeredness. It's, again, also exaggerating the importance of I and mine, but it also has that emotional response of like, I want this I want to get everything possible for that I. Like it's that emotional mind in the sense it holds on to the I and mine. Does that make sense? So it's exaggerating. Exaggerating, this is more important. That is so not in accordance with reality. And that governs all our actions, right? We feel deep within, it's very deeply ingrained in our psyche, in our psychological makeup, that my happiness and I are more important. And that's why we can never be really happy. That's why even our happiness, it's not real happiness, because it's got that layer, that veil of self-obsession. We can never be truly relaxed, be truly happy. It's impossible. Does this make sense? That's really important. Okay, but we haven't come to attachment other than this type. What other attachments are there? What other afflictions or whatever emotions are there? Afflictive emotions are there? Anger. Attachment towards other people. Why? Because of this original attachment. My happiness is more important. I am more important. My happiness is more important. So if you bring me that happiness I so desire, I don't want to let go of you. Make sense? If on the other hand, you're destroying or in any way threaten that happiness, I don't like you. Resentment, aversion. Okay. How are we with the time? Should we take a pee break?
You can close that window if
If you're
you're getting wet.
getting wet? Oh. I think she couldn't hear, maybe because of the, I don't know.
Oh, okay. You're okay.
Okay. I don't know, is this a good time to take a break? It's raining outside, so you can't really go outside.
You want to take a 20-minute break?
Pardon?
20-minute break?
We can do that, but no one can go outside. But we don't, it may go on for hours, so it's not a good reason. Yeah.
Or you want to do it later?
I don't know how long it's going to rain. So
Yeah, so this rain is the rain that looks like...
it looks like the one that's going to last and get stronger. Let's take a break. Right?